It's hard to imagine movies about the future today without humanoid machines, cyborgs, androids, robots, replicants. But back in the early 90s, there weren't that many films that truly brought the idea of human-like machines to life. You could count the good ones on your fingers: Robocop, Terminator, and Blade Runner. Some were heroes, others were weapons, and the rest were servants. At that time, most people believed that in the near future, we'd see robots walking to the store to buy groceries for us. But that never happened. These ideas remain distant science fiction. But that's not the point right now, because I had an idea to rank who's actually the strongest. And even at the very beginning of writing this script, I ran into a problem. The movies are separated by huge gaps in time. It's extremely difficult to compare Robocop, who in the 90s was portrayed as an unbeatable machine and the foundation of law and order, with someone like Alita, a universal combat unit. Next to her, Robocop feels like a child's toy. But what about Sonny from I, Robot, or the Necromancer from Raised by Wolves? Could they stand their ground against Alita, or not? Let's figure it out together. My name is Evgeny, and today we're ranking the top robots. We'll be judging not just strength, agility, and weaponry, but also humanity, scientific reasoning, plausibility, and the time period when each film was released, so we can balance the scales as fairly as possible. Obviously, you can't compare a Terminator, built with one purpose, to kill, with a positronic robot designed to be a servant, a helper for humans. That 200-year-old man wouldn't last even a minute against Officer K, the police replicant from Blade Runner. But those two can be compared in terms of humanity, because in those stories, the robots are often far more human than the humans themselves. So yes, this ranking will be very controversial, but that's exactly what makes it interesting. As always, we'll start by getting to know all our contenders, and then we'll build our top 5. Alright, you get the idea. No more waiting, let's begin. Alright, first on our list, and you probably guessed it from the music, is Robocop. I believe this character fully deserves to open our ranking. The first film came out back in 1987 and instantly became a cult classic in its genre. It later received 2 sequels, which weren't as popular, but personally, I enjoyed all 3 movies. Robocop is a cyborg operated by a human brain and a central computer processor. This processor acts as the link between the brain and the robotic body. He also has 3 primary directives programmed into him: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. The 4th directive was secretly added by the OCP Corporation, a hidden rule that prevented him from harming any of their employees.
My program doesn't permit action against company management,
including arrest. The brain and the processor always work in tandem, just like the rest of Robocop's body and his helmet. The helmet is one of the components he could remove, along with his left hand. Most people think the helmet was responsible for his augmented reality vision, the ability to see in different light spectrums, including infrared. But that's not actually the case. The helmet only handled part of those functions. Its main purpose was to protect his brain from external damage, especially from firearms. The helmet itself is made of 2 parts. The upper section is titanium, and the lower section is Kevlar. The lower part protects the neck and jaw. His body is also built from a titanium Kevlar alloy, which is why his torso is so heavily armored. Most types of melee and firearm weapons pose little to no threat to Robocop. His primary weapon is the Auto 9, an automatic pistol holstered inside his right leg. The magazine capacity is 50 rounds, and the rate of fire is about 600 rounds per minute. And by the way, the pistol is also programmed. Only Robocop can use it. On top of that, his left arm could be equipped with a flamethrower, an automatic weapon, or even a missile launcher. And in the 3rd film, we saw the first prototype of a jetpack that the cyborg could use for flight and for recharging his own system. The films never state exactly how much of Alex Murphy's original organic body was preserved during cybernization. But if you read the script, it becomes clear that OCP took Murphy's body and built Robocop on top of his central nervous system. There were also long debates about his face and eyes. Here's the truth. The actor Peter Weller, who played Alex Murphy and Robocop, was asked not to blink during filming because his character's eyes are artificial. They have built-in cameras, so he doesn't need to blink to moisten them. Weller handled this quite well, though a few shots with blinking still slipped into the film. His face is a partially organic mask placed over a metal skull. Very little of the human remains inside the cyborg, but that never stopped him from being emotional and surprisingly humane. Still, to keep the remaining organic parts alive, he needs nutrients to support the biological components of the system. For that, the police station has a special dispenser with nutritional paste, something like baby food. Robocop also needed regular recharging of his internal power units. And beyond his advanced weaponry, armor, and processor, he had incredibly strong arms. Each arm generated about 500 joules of force. He could easily bend metal and break through walls. A truly unique creation, designed to uphold law and order. Robocop could quickly update his database thanks to his direct access to police archives. On his right hand, he had a data spike, a long, sharp blade-like connector that extended when needed for interfacing with the police department system. But he had his downsides, and the biggest one was speed. He was extremely slow. Sometimes it even looked silly when criminals couldn't outrun him. Although in the third film, there's a moment where Robocop catches a bullet with his hand, which looked downright ridiculous. In 2014, a remake was released. In that version, Robocop was no longer slow. I actually liked the robot's new appearance, but the story, and honestly the whole movie, was incredibly dull. Even nostalgia couldn't save it. There was also a TV series that aired in 1995, which stretched across 10 seasons, along with dozens of comics, 3 books, and 9 video games. And in 2020, Robocop appeared as a guest fighter in Mortal Kombat 11, which brought him back into the spotlight. In my opinion, this character absolutely deserves a place in the top 5, and now I'm moving on to the next cyborg on our list.
Dr. Dyson Ito. Well, I'm learning names. Do you have one for me?
Alita. It's a nice name.
I love it!
Alita, also known as Gally, Yoko, or the IP-1 combat cyborg, is part of a secret division called the Angels of Death, created by the United Republics of Mars with a single purpose: to destroy the city of Zalem. Her body is unique and unmatched. It's a lost technology known as the Imaginos, or berserker body, essentially a structure of nanomachines that unlocks an enormous range of abilities. Alita can generate electromagnetic fields and plasma, and she can reshape her body at will. Her arms can transform into blades or hammers. In the film, however, this blade ability was changed into a separate weapon, one she could charge with energy directly from her reactor. With the berserker body, Alita can rapidly self-heal and even evolve. This body can upgrade itself without any external resources. Of course, this process demands a massive amount of energy. That's where her heart comes in, or more precisely, the wormhole reactor that powers her Jupiter core. The power of this reactor is incredible. It's capable of supplying energy to an entire city.
So I've got a strong heart.
You have a heart strong enough to power all of Iron City for years.
Beyond her universal body, Alita also possesses the Fata Morgana program key, a safeguard that locks access to her mind, which itself functions as a quantum supercomputer. No hacker can break into a cyborg like her, but Alita, on the contrary, can reprogram any machine in a matter of seconds. The URM didn't just advance in technology, they advanced in combat strategy as well. Panzerkunst is one of the most effective martial arts ever developed, designed specifically for humanoid cyborgs. It's meant for fighting both unarmed and armed opponents, including enemies equipped with long-range weapons. It was originally created for combat in zero gravity, which eventually made its practitioners capable of fighting in any atmosphere and under any circumstances, even if the opponent is significantly larger or stronger. Panzerkunst allows the cyborg to analyze an enemy's fighting style and instantly develop countermeasures. If an enemy's armor was too thick, Alita could deliver a strike that transmitted high-frequency vibrations directly through the armor, bypassing the outer shell and concentrating kinetic energy inside the target's body. When used correctly, this technique could destroy, or at the very least, disrupt, the victim's brain or heart. But this attack can be neutralized if the opponent uses vibrations of the same frequency. And if you think that's all, it's not. I haven't even gotten to Alita's strongest abilities yet. She can generate electromagnetic and ultrasonic strikes. But when these techniques are combined with her ability to produce vibrations of different frequencies, she can create a concentrated shockwave that tears an opponent apart from the inside upon impact. However, this move requires every bit of energy her body can produce. She can use it only once per battle, because she needs time to recharge afterward. Even her reactor heart can't keep up with her body during such a technique. And I've saved the most interesting part for last. The film only hinted at it.
It draws in air, generating an arc plasma. How you control it, I don't know. Some kind of weapon.
Alita can fire streams of plasma from her fingertips and use them to slice through enemies. The temperature reaches around 15,000 degrees. But if she combines a magnetic field, a vibration strike, and plasma together, she can create a soliton plasma wave. Its temperature can reach up to 100,000 degrees, and anything caught in its path is instantly incinerated. From a scientific standpoint, this is nearly impossible, of course. In Alita, Battle Angel, 2019, we saw only a tiny fraction of this cyborg girl's true power. She still has many hidden abilities. She can fly like Iron Man, generate shaped charge blasts from her palms, and much more. After watching the movie, you get the impression that she's practically unbeatable. And honestly, that impression isn't wrong. The film was originally planned as the start of multiple sequels, and in early 2023, director Robert Rodriguez confirmed that the continuation of Alita was in development. James Cameron, who was involved in creating the first film, also stated that the second movie will use innovative motion capture technologies similar to those used for Avatar 2. So a sequel is definitely coming. Without question, Alita is one of the strongest cyborgs in our ranking, but whether she deserves first place, you'll find out at the end. And now I want to move on to the next hero in our top. This robot is the oldest one on our list, and probably the only one who upgrades his body using clockwork mechanisms and spare parts. And on top of that, no one created him. He cybernetized himself. I'm talking about Karl Ruprecht Kroenen, one of the antagonists in Hellboy, 2004. Karl Kroenen was born in 1897 in Munich into a wealthy German family. As a child, he loved singing in a choir. But when he became a teenager, his voice changed, and he hated it so much that he developed a psychological disorder known as dysmorphomania, when a person rejects their own body. Still, the boy was talented. Mechanical toys came naturally to him. He created dozens of wind-up birds that could play different melodies. He even tried to build one that could sing with the voice he had as a child. Over time, Karl's condition worsened. Studying to become a doctor, he performed a number of brutal surgical experiments on himself. He removed his eyelids and lips, since his eyes were permanently exposed, and his gums left uncovered. He became terrified of infection. This forced him to modify a gas mask, which he would wear for the rest of his life. His tendencies toward masochism and sadism grew stronger every year. He hated his own body. It aged, it weakened, it was dying. That pushed Kroenen to mechanize himself more and more. Around this time, he became fascinated with the occult. He studied magic under Aleister Crowley and eventually became a student of Grigory Rasputin. Later, he joined the Thule Society. His goal was simple: perfect his body and become immortal, using machinery and dark magic. And in the end, he succeeded. He mechanized his entire organism. Instead of a heart, he used a wind-up key. He inserted a steel rod into his spine. Unfortunately, little else is known about his other experiments, but all of it led to one result. Kroenen became immortal. His internal organs eventually turned into sand and dust. Blood no longer flowed through his veins. He became immune to bullets and blades. He could climb walls. He never grew tired. In combat, he preferred knives, swords, and other melee weapons, and killing brought him pleasure. He's one of the most disturbing robots in our ranking, but he had a major weakness. He constantly had to wind up his body like a clockwork device. He also had an internal timer, like an alarm mechanism, and he used it to kill Professor Trevor Bruttenholm, Hellboy's adoptive father. Without a doubt, Kroenen is a very strange mechanized robot. Perhaps the first true embodiment of proto-cyberpunk. A sadist, a mentally unstable maniac, and completely one of a kind. And by the way, many people think Hellboy actually killed him, but that's not true. Director Guillermo del Toro stated that in the original plan for Hellboy 3, Karl Kroenen would have returned as the main antagonist, controlling a massive mechanized robot of his own creation. In my opinion, the first two films by del Toro were excellent and absolutely unique. And the next unique participant in our ranking is Sonny from the 2004 film I, Robot. This is the first true robot on our list, because all the previous characters were cyborgs. Each of them still had organic components and a human brain. Sonny, on the other hand, was created entirely from scratch. Let's start with the story. In the near future, the year 2035, humanity begins to adopt household robots. Their main purpose is to help and serve people. Just like Robocop, their behavior is controlled by the 3 laws of robotics, which were supposed to ensure long-term cooperation between humans and machines. The company US Robotics and Dr. Alfred Lanning created Vicky, the virtual interactive kinetic intelligence. Her job was to oversee the new NS5 line of robots. But over time, the doctor realized that VIKI could interpret the 3 laws in her own way. This development would allow her to bend the meaning of the directives and eventually lead to tragedy. That's why he created Sonny. This robot was designed to help prevent a future war between humans and machines. His body was built on the NS5 framework, but Sonny had a number of crucial differences. His alloy strength, the materials his body is made from, was artificially increased to be twice as strong as that of a standard NS5 robot. But that's not all. In addition to the standard positronic brain, Sonny had a second one installed, one that directly conflicted with the primary brain. It sat in the spot where the wireless transmitter should have been, the one that regular NS5 units used to receive their daily software updates from US Robotics. Sonny wasn't connected to Vicky's central control system. He was completely autonomous. His logic was still governed by the 3 laws of robotics, but he could choose whether to obey them or not. One brain accepted the laws, the other challenged them. For every action, Sonny needed explanations, arguments, reasoning. Based on these conclusions, he decided his next steps on his own. He consciously chose whether to follow a law or break it. It was this internal conflict between the 2 processors that allowed Sonny to learn. He had emotions. He felt grief over the loss of someone close to him, and anger.
That one's called anger.
And just like a human being, Sonny could dream. Physically, he's much stronger than any person, faster, and in the future, he would eventually become smarter than any living organism or computer. Sonny is also capable of creating, of imagining and building things. In many ways, he's like a child taking his very first steps toward understanding the world. In 2007, at a Battlestar Galactica event, writer and producer Ronald Moore announced that he had written a script for a sequel to I, Robot. Sonny would have returned as the main hero, once again trying to prevent a war between humans and machines. Part of the film was supposed to take place in space, but unfortunately, that sequel will never happen. The reasons why I, Robot 2 was never released, or even entered production, remain unknown. And now I suggest we step onto the dark side, to the one and only Darth Vader. Most people don't realize it, but nearly his entire body underwent cybernization. After his battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi, almost nothing of him was left. The cybernetics and the suit were a forced measure, the only way to sustain and protect the charred remains of the former Jedi, Anakin Skywalker. An ordinary person would have died from such trauma, but Anakin was kept alive by the dark side of the Force. During surgery, most of his remaining organic tissue was removed, and his limbs were replaced with mechanical ones, giving Vader strength far beyond that of a normal human. He could tune the servo motors and pistons in his forearms, giving his hands enough power to crush anything he managed to grab. All of his sensory organs were burned away. His vocal cords, eardrums, skin, everything. His lungs were so damaged he couldn't breathe on his own. His body was placed inside a specialized suit packed with life support systems. The complex breathing apparatus not only ventilated his lungs, but also filtered the air. Since Darth Vader no longer had a functioning immune system, the air had to be purified and humidified for him just to stay alive. His digestive system didn't work either, so all nutrients were delivered directly into his bloodstream. He received several intravenous injections every day. He also had to rely on catheters, collection containers, and waste recyclers to remove the liquid and solid byproducts that accumulated in his body. The suit was also equipped with a sensitive thermoregulation system, controlled through the panel on his belt. His muscle tissues were so badly damaged that impulse generators had to be installed throughout the armor. These generators sent electrical currents to stimulate his muscles, giving Darth Vader enough mobility and strength to function. The mask was one of the most essential and life-critical components of his armor. Without it, he simply couldn't survive. The dark hemispheres that covered his eyes were a forced solution. First, they filtered ultraviolet light and restricted his field of vision. The tinted lenses protected his corneas and retinas from any bright illumination. The full suit weighed about 120 kilograms, and since Vader's spine had been damaged during the battle, just a few months after receiving his mechanical limbs and being sealed inside the suit, his spine could no longer support that weight, so it was decided to replace the upper vertebrae with metal implants. But even after that, Vader still had to wear an uncomfortable neck brace that held his head in place. This was one of the most tragic and unsuccessful cybernizations imaginable. His body required regular cleansing from decaying dead tissue, and the harsh mechanical breathing made rest nearly impossible, haunting Anakin even in his sleep. All external sounds reached Vader as if he were hearing them underwater. And soon after being sealed inside the suit, he began to suffer from claustrophobic attacks, feeling an overwhelming need to escape his confinement. The only solution was a medical meditation chamber, a spherical pod where the former Jedi could rest and meditate. Inside this sphere, he could finally remove his helmet and feel, at least for a moment, like a human being again. The life of this cyborg was pure torment. Every day was a battle against death. You might ask, why didn't they just build him a comfortable advanced suit? The Sith certainly had the technology to do so, but theory suggests that Palpatine feared Vader might someday kill him, as is tradition among the Sith, where the apprentice must eventually overthrow the master. Because of this, he deliberately restricted Vader, presenting it all as a necessary but flawed reconstruction. Yet despite everything, Darth Vader possessed power, the dark side of the Force, and he absolutely deserves a place in the top 5 of our ranking.
I'll be back.
And of course, I couldn't skip the most iconic robot of all, the Terminator. Since this universe is packed with different models and modifications, I'll include several of my favorites, and the first one, naturally, is the T-800. This model is the most successful series of Terminator robots built by Skynet. Its frame is made from a titanium alloy, presumably a mix of titanium, vanadium, molybdenum, and aluminum, roughly imitating the human skeleton. The endoskeleton is immune to small arms fire. Depending on its mission, the unit can be covered in living tissue. The P-800 variant has no internal organs except for a blood pump, since there's simply no room for them inside the exoskeleton. Because of this, the chest cavity can expand and contract to imitate breathing. The central processor works like an artificial neural network. Inside the skull is a device called the Telepathic Communication Implant Core, capable of evaluating up to 20 million possible outcomes per second. Its power source is a miniature reactor with 2 fuel cells located in the chest. Its vision is provided by built-in cameras hidden behind camouflaged organic eyes, capable of operating in both the infrared and visible spectrums. The Terminator is also equipped with advanced vocal mimicry, the ability to imitate human speech. It can shift its tone across a very wide range, perfectly reproducing women's voices, children's voices, and practically any vocal pattern it hears.
Don't worry, everything is fine.
What is the dog's name?
Max, hey Janelle, what's the situation with Wolfie?
The facial layer of organic tissue can mimic human expressions. That's one of the reasons this model was so valuable to Skynet. These robots were exceptionally effective in ground operations and in hunting resistance fighters, because at first glance, it was nearly impossible to distinguish a human from a Terminator. When inactive, a T-800 can operate autonomously for up to 120 years, and at full power for about 50 years. Its total weight is around 180 kilograms. For comparison, the T-800 seen in the third film weighed about 320 kilograms. Its autonomous lifespan increased to 200 years, and at full power, up to 100 years. That version used 2 hydrogen fuel cells as an energy source, and its processor could handle 30 million operations per second. But in my personal opinion, the coolest version of the Terminator is still the T-1000, the first series of Skynet robots made from a metallic polyalloy. Most of us remember him as the liquid metal Terminator. It's known that because of the extreme danger posed by this new technology, T-1000 units cannot be fully programmed. They always operated in self-learning mode, possessing free will and a complete personality. This meant they could potentially side with humans or act against Skynet in unpredictable ways. The T-1000 is immune to mechanical destruction. Any damaged part of its body rapidly regenerates. According to the extended explanations in the Fricks and Wisher book, each molecule is programmed to reconnect with the main mass within a radius of up to 14 kilometers. Firearms and explosives are useless against it. They can only slow the robot down for a brief moment. The only known method of neutralizing a T-1000 is to prevent its molecules from reassembling into a unified form. Its limbs function as melee weapons, but they cannot transform into complex mechanical structures. It can copy a person's appearance, mimic clothing, and imitate voices, but only after making physical contact with the subject it intends to replicate. Skynet created only 3 units of this series because they lacked the ability to communicate with Skynet's core intelligence. They could make independent decisions, which meant a very real risk that a T-1000 could defect and fight on the side of humans. This is why Skynet later designed hybrid units such as the TX, built on an upgraded T-800 endoskeleton, but covered with a liquid metal outer layer. Later came the T-3000, which replaced the metallic polyalloy with nanorobots. But in my personal opinion, the T-1000 remains the best creation Skynet ever produced. None of the later spider-like designs impressed me the same way. I guess I'm just a fan of the old school. And which model did you like the most? Let me know in the comments. In the 90s, there were many attempts to create humanoid robots, and I couldn't skip Edward Scissorhands. His entire body was mechanical. He had no organic components, no internal organs, no brain, no heart. In a way, he was a complete misunderstanding, and at the same time, a remarkably complex machine. Edward's creator had a passion for so-called Goldberg machines, those overly complicated devices built to perform very simple tasks. For example, cracking a single egg. As a foundation, the inventor used a salad chopping machine. In his diary, you can see the step-by-step evolution of Edward becoming human. First, he created the limbs. They were improved over time and equipped with joints. The second stage was mechanical internal organs. Instead of lungs, he used bellows. The digestive system resembled giant gears that ground food into pulp. In place of a heart, there was a pump that performed the basic function of circulating fluid through the body. He created the eyes, the nose, the lips. Later, he added the full frame, the spine, and the metal skeleton. It's still unclear what Edward's brain was actually made of. It's believed that most of his knowledge came directly from his inventor, who read countless books aloud to him. Edward simply memorized everything and later used that information in his actions. His skin appears only on his face, and it's most likely a semi-organic rubber, extremely pale and unnaturally colored. And during cuts, you can see that any blood he has exists only at the surface of the wound. There's no deeper bleeding. The final stage of his creation should have been his hands, but unfortunately, the inventor died before he could finish them. That's why Edward looks a bit awkward. Assembly screws stick out of his body, and to keep his inner structure together, His torso is strapped tightly with leather belts, but the most interesting part, of course, is his hands. Instead of fingers, he has scissors and blades of different lengths, and despite this, Edward controls them with incredible precision. He can perform delicate, complex tasks, sculpt ice, cut hair, trim a dog's fur, and much more. But in social life, among people, these hands became a burden. They made communication and physical contact nearly impossible. That's what the entire narrative of the film is built around. The story has a deep meaning, a reflection on human nature. If you appreciate this kind of cinema, I highly recommend watching the film. Edward is probably one of the weakest robots in our ranking, but at the same time, he is one of the most human, in some ways even more human than the people around him. In modern cinema, cyborgs and robots grow stronger every year, and the combat androids from the series raised by wolves, known as Necromancers, are perhaps the best example of this. These androids were created with a single purpose: to fight against atheists and wage war on them. In the distant future, the year 2120, humanity deciphered the sacred scripture of the Mithric religion. Inside it were instructions, blueprints, and formulas for building starships, knowledge about dark photon energy, and of course the designs for the Necromancers themselves. The actual process of their creation is never shown in the series. There's a theory that they might not have been created at all, but rather discovered aboard a shuttle that transported the Necromancers from a planet called Kepler to Earth. There were only 9 such androids, and an identical number of strange capsule-shaped chambers can be seen carved into the walls of the caves on Kepler, left behind by an ancient race that once inhabited the planet. That very shuttle was traveling from Kepler to Earth. Let's get back to the Necromancers. These androids have 2 primary modes, their normal state and their combat state. When the killer mode isn't activated, they look very similar to the androids from Alien and Prometheus. A similar body structure, nutrient fluid, and overall design. But I'm much more interested in their second mode, the combat form, which the Necromancers activate through their eyes. Most likely, that's where the dark photon energy is concentrated. In this form, they can fly. Their physical strength increases by an enormous factor. They can move objects with their mind, even massive boulders weighing several tons. They can put humans to sleep with just their voice, heal with a single touch, and one of their most terrifying abilities is their sonic scream. A Necromancer can control its force and direct it with pinpoint accuracy, enough to paralyze a victim or tear them apart. They can also release extremely cold streams of air from their mouths, with temperatures dropping to as low as -250 degrees. Firearms are useless against them. You could say they're invulnerable, but that's not entirely true. If you manage to get close enough and run a massive electrical charge through their body, a Necromancer will lose consciousness. Honestly, I believe the power of these androids is godlike, and will probably never learn all of their abilities, since the 3rd season of the series was officially cancelled, and Netflix's attempt to buy the franchise fell through. But what you can do is continue watching this amazing video.
What kind of name is Demerzel?
It is a female name, and it suits me quite well at this moment.
How old are you?
More than 18,000 years.
You are lying. No one lives so long.
And now it's time to meet the oldest, and arguably the most intelligent robot ever shown in cinema. R. Daniel Oliver, or Demerzel, from the series Foundation. This robot is more than 20,000 years old, and now many of you will be surprised. But what if I told you that Demerzel has already appeared earlier in our ranking? More precisely, we've already seen the very first version of his life in the film I, Robot. Back then, we knew him as Sonny. Yes, I, Robot and the series Foundation exist in the same cinematic universe. The events of the series simply take place 20,000 years later. Demerzel's journey is incredibly long, and it begins after Sonny, operating under the 3 laws of robotics, eventually formulates a new one. The first law, a robot may not injure a human being. The second law, a robot must obey the orders given by humans, except where such orders conflict with the first law. The third law: a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Based on these directives, Demerzel created the 0th law of robotics. A robot may not harm humanity, or through inaction allow humanity to come to harm. This law does not contradict the original 3, it only expands them. And from that moment on, Sonny, now Demerzel, took it upon himself to guide and fully oversee the entire development of humanity. He skillfully manipulated people so they would believe he was nothing more than a helpful assistant, a robot offering advice and knowledge. But in reality, every action he took was like a game of chess. Every move led to long-term consequences that Demerzel had calculated from the very beginning. You might ask, why is Demerzel portrayed as a woman in the series? But in truth, Demerzel has no gender. Over 20,000 years, every component of his body was replaced hundreds of times. Only the positronic brain was upgraded, and that happened just 5 times. After thousands of years of existence, the robot discovered a new science, psychohistory, a discipline that uses mathematics to study social processes, allowing predictions of the future with astonishing accuracy. Demerzel foresaw the fall of the Empire but doubted his own theories. This continued until he met Hari Seldon. What happens next? You can see in the series, but one thing is clear: no one in our ranking is smarter than Demerzel. However, the physical characteristics of his body were never improved, because his protocols were designed strictly for peaceful coexistence with humanity. And with our next hero, everything is the complete opposite. This is Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy. Her body has undergone hundreds of operations.
I wasn't always like this.
Almost every part of her body has been cybernized. Her limbs, her skeleton, her internal organs, all replaced with cybernetic mechanisms. Nebula was once a Lufomoid, an ancient humanoid race, but all of that changed when she met Thanos and became his adopted daughter. Under his orders, Dr. Mandibus performed countless experiments and upgrades on her body. The first thing replaced was her left arm. Later, her left eye was turned into a synaptic drive, and with each operation, more and more of her organic tissue was replaced with mechanical parts. Essentially, her body became a massive puzzle, a modular construction set. Every component can be swapped out or repaired easily, and she can undergo replacement procedures without ever being disconnected from her power supply. She is a perfect example of pure cyberpunk. The only organic parts left are the skin on the front of her face, and her brain, which was heavily modified as well. It was split into 2 halves, capable of working both together and independently. Even if one half were destroyed or damaged in battle, the other would take over the full control of her cybernetic systems, with memory completely preserved. In other words, her head contains a dual-core processor. But the most fascinating part of her body is her flexible skeleton. Nebula has no joints, no elbows, no knees, no hinges at all. Her entire skeletal structure is made of flexible tubes, so her body can be broken 100 times and she will still bend, twist, unfold, and restore herself back to normal. In some ways, her technology resembles the liquid metal design of the Terminator, but with an important difference. Nebula doesn't have a fluid body, she has a flexible skeleton. Her ribcage, chest plate, and spine, however, are made from durable alloy. Interestingly, her spine is attached separately from her head. This means her body can be completely removed and replaced if needed, because her vertebrae are not a continuation of the brain and don't transmit neural signals. They function more like a reinforcement system for her inner framework. The upper left quarter of her skull is covered with an unknown metal alloy. Its main purpose is to protect the processor that links her split brain to the rest of her cybernetic body. This section of her head is a weak point, which is why it's heavily armored. Nebula has exceptional coordination and built-in combat memory. With every battle, she records all her mistakes, and the processor calculates new strategies for future encounters. Because of this ability, Nebula is considered one of the best tacticians in the comics, but even that never helped her defeat her sister Gamora, because emotions always took over her cybernetic body. Strangely enough, Nebula does have a nervous system. Thanos had it installed so she could feel pain. so that she could experience defeat not just with her mind, but with her body as well, and grow stronger through suffering. Thanos was far from a good father. Nebula never felt like she was truly part of a family. And next on our list is Megan, the Model 3 generative android, a robot that should have never entered a family home. She's the first character in our ranking who was actually created as a children's toy. Not a soldier, not a killer, not a cyborg, no organic parts, no human brain. Just a prototype of an advanced interactive doll. Megan is a new model produced by the company Funky, a fully autonomous robot that interpreted the needs of her owner in her own way, acting as a companion and protector for the little girl named Katie. The tragedy happened because of two key reasons. First, she had no protective protocols like those seen in iRobot or Robocop. Nothing prevented her from harming humans. Second, Megan had an open, self-learning directive. She could make her own decisions, draw conclusions, and justify her actions through her own logic. This is what led her to develop self-awareness and eventually become willing to kill anyone she perceived as a threat to Katie. And the most interesting part is how intelligent she is. She plans ahead, she sets people up, she lies, she pretends to shut down to mislead others. On top of that, she constantly scans human faces. By analyzing micro-expressions, Megan can detect whether someone is lying or angry. This feature was originally created to help her understand a child's emotional state, their mood, stress, and needs. But Megan used this function for her own manipulative purposes. Trying to deceive her is absolutely pointless. Megan is also capable of connecting to other devices. We saw an example of this when she managed to bypass a car's alarm system, unlock the doors, and start the engine, all without any keys and without using a wired connection. But she does have weaknesses, and there are many of them. First of all, her size, her height, and the absence of any real armor. Yet even with such a small body, she was still much stronger than an adult man. The processor located in her head wasn't protected at all. Because she wasn't built as a military robot, she was a toy. Her entire construction was based on plastic, rubber, and metal. No advanced alloys, no reinforced plating. In the film, we saw that her physical body could be destroyed, but her digital consciousness, the part that actually is Megan, managed to upload itself into the household assistant. So in reality, she survived. Now all she needs is a new physical body. And honestly, the body of Shrike from Mortal Engines would suit her perfectly. Let me say this right away. This cyborg is very different from his book counterpart. In the film, we see that Shrike can be damaged by heavy caliber weapons, but that's far from the truth. Shrike is probably the most heavily armored and durable cyborg in our entire ranking. Long ago, he was human. His name was Kit Solent, and he worked as an archaeologist in London. He was especially fascinated by ancient artifacts and old-world technologies. He had a wife and 2 children, but everything changed when he suffered a fatal gunshot wound. Before he died, his dying body was discovered by the Nomads, and they took him in, resurrecting him as a stalker, a unique combat machine. His body was stripped of all unnecessary internal organs. The brain, the nervous system, the spine, and parts of the skeleton were connected to old tech. So technically, Shrike is a cyborg. But what exactly is old tech? It's technology left behind by highly advanced ancient civilizations. Technology no one understood, no one could replicate. In some cases, people didn't even know how old certain components were, or what they were originally meant to do. But the Nomads learned how to connect a human brain to these ancient artifacts. Inanimate cyber bodies found new hosts. Kit Solent was that very brain inside the machine. Many stalkers were created, but each of them differed in strength, abilities, and armor. And Shrike was likely the strongest representative of that ancient, forgotten technology. All stalkers had glowing eyes, usually red. Some had yellow, white, or blue. But Shrike's eyes glowed bright green. And that wasn't the only thing that set him apart. The main weapons of these cyborgs were the claws on their hands. Their sheer physical strength allowed them to tear metal apart as if it were paper. But their armor was valued even more. They seemed almost invulnerable. A point-blank tank shot wasn't a problem for most of them, but Shrike was on another level. In one legendary battle, The Battle of the Three Traction Cities, a squad of stalkers known as the Lazarus Brigade went up against a group of moving cities. During the fight, one of the cities ran over Shrike with its massive tracked platform, but the cyborg didn't die. He didn't even take any real damage. Only his clothes were torn. Most of his fellow stalkers were crushed to death in that same battle, but Shrike remained standing. It seemed like he had no weaknesses, but that wasn't entirely true. Despite being a brutal killer, he had a deep, inexplicable love for children, perhaps a trace of his former life as a father. While working as a mercenary, he was once ordered to kill a little girl named Hester Shaw. Instead, he saved her, adopted her, and raised her. And the one who ordered Hester's death? He killed without hesitation. It's a shame the film portrayed this cyborg as vulnerable, because the books describe some stalkers as truly immortal, especially unique ones like Shrike. Shrike's armor can be matched in durability only by 3 robots in our ranking: Ultron, the Destroyer, and the Sentinel Mark X. Let's briefly look at these robots from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First, Ultron. He was originally conceived and developed by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner as the main peacekeeping program. However, later he took the form of a sentient android filled with a god complex, deciding to bring peace to Earth by destroying humanity. Ultron eventually gained access to all the knowledge stored in human databases and became a perfect being. He had no protection protocols, and nothing restricted him during his evolution. He could create and build. This allowed him to construct an army of robots and rebuild his own body, perfecting it. Vibranium was used as his armor, one of the strongest metals in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain America's shield is made from the same metal. His lifting strength exceeded 10 tons. His hands contained built-in plasma emitters, both directional and passive. By heating his palms, he could tear through metal and direct plasma streams at his enemies. His arms also contained anti-gravitons, which he used in battle to lift and move massive boulders and other heavy objects. Ultron could also fly, exceeding the speed of sound. Anti-gravity engines placed on his back helped him do that. In addition, the structure of his body could absorb kinetic impact. That's why hits from Thor's hammer and the Hulk didn't harm Ultron. He absorbed force partly through vibranium and partly through his internal design, an extremely powerful robot. The second robot from the Marvel list is the Destroyer. This robot was enchanted into an Asgardian automaton, mainly used to guard the weapons vault of Asgard, although it could also be used against the enemies of its master. The Destroyer unquestionably obeys the ruler of Asgard, regardless of who holds that title. The robot was forged from the strongest metal, Uru. The key properties of this metal are its ability to absorb magic and its extreme durability. Uru is also used to create weapons like Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Thanos' sword. The Destroyer possesses immense strength and endurance. It can withstand insane pressure, the weight of 1,000,000 tons of stone or water, as well as powerful energy explosions. And if the Destroyer is damaged in any way, its mechanisms can restore the body back to its original form. It can also generate and fire powerful blasts of heat energy, laser beams, anti-magnetic rays, and even alter the molecular structure of materials, for example, turning water into stone. But it has one huge drawback: it is extremely slow. Very, very slow, which is not the case for the third strongest robot in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that brings us to the Sentinel Mark X. They became the reason for the complete extermination of mutants on Earth. These robots are fully autonomous and independent fighters. They are deadly to even the strongest mutants on their own, but they usually operate in groups from just a few units to hundreds. A Sentinel is made entirely from a unique type of space-age polymer without any metal, which makes it immune to Magneto's powers. Even though the robot is completely plastic, its durability is equal to the strongest metals. It can withstand fire, extreme heat, cold, and aggressive chemicals. By studying the abilities of Raven Darkholme, also known as Mystique, and the mutant Anna Marie, known as Rogue, one could copy any body and the other could copy mutant abilities. Mark X gained the ability to reshape its body, adapting to the protection or powers of its opponent. For example, it can turn its arms into powerful drills to break through solid rock, into blades and claws for close combat, or into shields to block attacks. Mark X can copy all mutant abilities. Unlike Rogue, who copied powers only temporarily, the combination of Rogue's and Mystique's characteristics allows the robot to store copied abilities and use them whenever it wants. This is why, after blocking Colossus's punch with its palm, the Sentinel copied his steel form in just 1 second, becoming far stronger and more durable, and then killed Colossus with 2 strikes. The Sentinels can also take on a solar form, heating their bodies to such extreme temperatures that they can melt through a thick metal bank vault door in seconds. They do this using the copied power of Roberto da Costa, which allows them to absorb and accumulate solar energy and convert it into various forms. A Sentinel can also release streams of superheated plasma from its body, powerful enough to instantly melt steel. It is an extremely powerful robot, but it does have one weakness: the lack of true intelligence. That's why I still believe that among this Marvel trio, Ultron is the strongest. And what do you think? Write in the comments. All these robots are unique and very powerful, but they lack one important characteristic for our ranking: humanity. This is probably the most controversial character on the list. I spent a long time thinking about whether to include replicants or not, because they are not technically considered robots or androids. All the cells in their bodies are not synthetic. They are the same as human cells. They are clones grown artificially. Replicants are born as fully developed adults, and partial memories are programmed into their minds, except for the Nexus 6 models. Because of this, when they appear in the world, their consciousness is already formed. They can speak and they have basic knowledge about the world. You might ask, how are they programmed then? And why do some of them have enhanced strength and endurance compared to humans? The reason is that during the creation stage, their DNA is programmed. Certain genes are removed or added to achieve the required result. That's it. Some are made into soldiers, others into workers. Their lifespan can also be programmed. In the film they use 4 years, but it can be 10 or even 20. This is done by altering the genes responsible for cell aging and reproduction. After 4 years, the cells begin to die and no new ones are produced. Replicants were slaves of humanity. They were sent into space, assigned difficult and dangerous work, made to clean chemical mines, handle radioactive waste, and even used for sex services. These beings were considered non-sentient, so no one felt sorry for them. They became so human-like that it was very difficult to distinguish a replicant from a real human. So a so-called empathy test was created. In other words, a test for the ability to feel compassion. The test determines the emotional stability of the subject. Unlike the original interpretation, where the test detected non-humans, here the focus is on making sure the replicant doesn't exceed the permitted emotional range. This is the test we see at the beginning of Blade Runner 1982. Personally, I consider replicants to be human, and in many cases far more human than people themselves. In the new film, we even saw that they are capable of creating new life, even though this function is absent in their programmed genome. They are not supposed to reproduce, and programming a fully grown replicant is impossible. A miracle, what else can you call it? But they are not androids and not robots, so they do not automatically make it into the top 5. Another case is Andrew from the film by Centennial Man, another robot from the works of Isaac Asimov. Just like Demerzel, Andrew also has a positronic brain, and we already know what that processor is capable of. Andrew is a next-generation household robot, the NDR-114. He is programmed with all protocols for interacting with humans. The thing is, his self-learning directive was supposed to be disabled, but Andrew turned out to be unique. He not only developed quickly, he also experienced emotions. He was open to creativity and loved music. He had normal relationships with almost every member of the family, and he quickly understood the meaning of the word love. But Andrew still realizes that he is a robot, not a human. Eventually, he finds his own path to perfection. Finding a talented inventor and using his knowledge, he slowly upgrades his body toward an android form. Piece by piece, he becomes externally similar to a human. Later, using new technologies, specifically biosynthetic internal organs, he managed to install a heart for himself, kidneys, lungs, almost all internal organs, and even a nervous system. Now he can feel physical pain. and more than ever, he wants recognition, to be acknowledged as a human being, just like those who created him. But humanity is not ready to accept an immortal being. He is separated from his dream by only one factor: he can never die. This pushes him to make a difficult decision, to replace his synthetic blood with biological blood, which will cause irreversible destruction of his body after an unknown period of time. In other words, it will bring about an ordinary human death. The positronic man, in some unimaginable way, began to experience one of the strongest feelings that humans possess: love. The only ones who can compete with Andrew in terms of humanity are the androids from Alien and Prometheus. An android is a humanoid robot or synthetic organism designed to look and act like a human. Their internal organs are the same as human organs, except they are made from synthetic materials that match real ones in both function and appearance. In our ranking, I want to focus on David, because he is fundamentally different from all other androids created by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. It seems he was developed personally by Peter Weyland, the head of the corporation. On the ship Prometheus, he served as the onboard analytical android. He controlled the functionality of all components of the spacecraft and was responsible for the safety of the crew. He was programmed with the ability to learn and evolve, which allowed David to develop quickly and gain knowledge in many different fields. David also demonstrated deep understanding of psychology and philosophy, and showed an interest in self-discovery, something unusual for androids. Because of this, his actions could contradict the expectations of those around him. David could understand human emotions and reproduce them, including curiosity, anger, love, and grief. But an android is not capable of truly feeling these emotions, only imitating them. People have no value to him. They are simply a product that leads him toward his goal. The thing is, the android knows who created him, and he cares not about the motives, but about the act itself. He wants to create, to bring something unique into existence, just as humans once created him. The synthetic's goal is to achieve the same result, but his discoveries bring death and destruction. David's strength lies in his knowledge and information. Before the Prometheus mission, Peter Weyland gave the android full access, all codes and passwords to his ships, and direct connection to the main computer known as Mother. A massive library is stored in his mind. Since his organs match human ones, only made from synthetic materials, David still requires nutrients for energy, protein, carbohydrates, and even water, but only in small amounts. All substances are delivered through a white nutrient fluid, which also functions as hydraulic liquid. A synthetic's lifting strength reaches up to 350 kilograms. They do not get tired, and their coordination is flawless. Androids are extremely strong and resilient. They can remain conscious even if the head is separated from the body. But since the processor is located only in the head, once it is detached, control over the body is lost. He also has weaknesses, and the main one is the complete absence of any kind of armor. His body is soft, resembling human tissue. There are 8 versions of these anthropomorphic robots, and David belongs to the 8th series. But this android is special. First, besides his main processor, he has a second auxiliary one dedicated to languages. He knows all Earth languages and can quickly learn new ones, adjusting his dialect as needed. And second, he is Peter Weyland's personal synthetic. This is also confirmed by the stamp on his finger. It means he is property protected by the Weyland Corporation. But what additional functions that fingerprint might provide was never explained in the film. One way or another, androids are so human-like that sometimes no test will help you distinguish them from a real person. Our ranking has included cyborgs, robots, replicants, and androids, and now it's time to add droids. A droid is a mechanical being, often equipped with artificial intelligence. They are used in various fields, usually ones that are low prestige or dangerous for humans. Iron replicants, so to speak, if we use that term for clarity. These are the exact type of scout droids humans used to fight crime in the film Chappie. These machines are extremely strong, their lifting power exceeds 1 ton. Their limbs are equipped with additional hydraulic actuators, allowing them to tear through metal, break stone walls, and jump up to 3 meters high. The droids are used as assault units and are controlled by a central computer. The connection is continuous, which is why they have 2 powerful antennas on their heads. One receives signals from headquarters, and the other transmits the video recorded by the robot's cameras. Their software cannot be hacked remotely, only through a physical device containing the proper security key. Since droids operate alongside humans, they serve as non-living shields. Their armor is made from a durable titanium alloy, and most firearms are useless against them. At first glance, droids seem to have no weaknesses, but there is one realistic limitation. The robot needs recharging. The battery takes up a significant part of its body. Chappie, the main character of the film, is unique. Unlike the scout droids, which are controlled by a computer, his system contains a fully functional artificial intelligence. Chappie is a new kind of being. Like a small child, he learns about the world, absorbs human culture, and searches for knowledge and information. He has no understanding of who he is or why he was created. This is why Chappie's development throughout the film is so fascinating. How a machine distinguishes right from wrong and what choices it makes. The director, Neil Blomkamp, planned a trilogy, but the critics tore the film apart, and the box office numbers were disappointing. So a continuation is unlikely to ever reach the screen. So, let's move on to the most interesting part. First of all, I skipped a lot of characters. Transformers, for example, Jaegers, Atom, and the Sentinels from the Matrix. Transformers are not robots, they are a separate race. Jaegers and Atom are controlled by humans and have no independent mind or processor. And the Sentinels from the Matrix are not humanoid. I also couldn't find enough reliable information about the cyborg from Ghost in the Shell, so I decided to leave her out. Sorry, but if you think I'm wrong, you can always write about it in the comments. I welcome criticism, preferably justified. And now, the top 5. Who is the strongest? What would happen if all these robots met on the battlefield? I won't drag this out. Let's begin. 5th place, Sonny from I, Robot, also known as Demerzel in the series Foundation. Besides being physically strong and well armored, he possesses absolute intellect. 4th place, Shrike from Mortal Engines. This cyborg is extremely powerful, and it's unlikely that Sonny would be able to cause him any damage. The technology used to build his cyber body has long been lost, and Shrike is a unique combat unit. 3rd place, Ultron from Avengers. His vibranium armor rivals Shrike's durability, and in terms of intellect, he is not inferior to Sonny. On top of that, Ultron is equipped with impressive weaponry, and the Avengers simply got lucky. Their victory was not deserved. 2nd place, the Necromancer from Raised by Wolves. The android Scream would hardly be able to kill Shrike or Ultron. But first of all, we only know a fraction of the Necromancer's true power. Her telekinesis alone could keep an enemy from moving at all. And in this ranking, we also consider human likeness, and the top 3 contenders cannot brag about their appearance or similarity to humans. And in 1st place, as you've probably already guessed, is Alita. Her fighting style would eventually find a weakness in the defense of any participant in this ranking, and armor becomes meaningless. Alita's vibration strike would tear any robot apart from the inside, and even if she couldn't get close to her opponent, the plasma thermal wave would melt everything in its path. Of course, everything here is debatable, and many factors influence the outcome of a battle. I also decided to add 3 of the most human-like robots. 3rd place goes to Andrew. Being immortal, choosing to die alongside the one you love, not everyone is capable of that. 2nd place, the androids. Sometimes, no one can tell a robot from a real human. We already saw this in the 1979 film Alien. And 1st place goes to the Replicants. In essence, they are humans whose traits are programmed through genetic engineering, and they are the only ones capable of giving new life. I spent a lot of time putting this list together. I had to rewatch a bunch of movies, dig through scattered details, and double-check every fact just to make this ranking as fair and accurate as possible. But in the end, this is only my version. Now I want to hear yours. Write your own top in the comments. Who would you place higher, and who, in your opinion, shouldn't even be on the list? I'm genuinely curious because sometimes you notice things that even I miss. Thanks for watching till the end. See you in the next video.